Why don't you want us to go on our field trip? I don't...
Okay, as much as I love this episode, that moment is fucking creepy. So getting some personal baggage out of the way, whenever I anticipated to any future season of Friendship is Magic, I had a personal wish list of what I wanted the show to do. Like bring back Chrysalis, give us some information about Applejack's parents, and give an episode about the Alicorn sisters. Only to be told that a chunk of that was done in the comics. Thereby aggravatingly let my hopes and dreams plummet harder than a metal iron tossed out in the ocean, and question of whether or not the comics had to be read or that any ideas passed around would be thrown in the dumpster and eliminate any exciting possibilities that would upscale the show's qualities, while being called narrow-minded over any refusal of the comics as an additional insult to injury. And yeah, I'm sorry, that was mentally scarring for me as a reviewer. At that point, my alleged wish list was pretty much down the drain. I couldn't bother answering anyone's question anymore about what to expect from the next season. That doesn't mean I stopped watching the show, of course, but it stung really hard, no thanks to the whole comic book debacle. Looking back at that, it was worded extremely badly by the fans, and not explained very well by the staff. There was even a misunderstanding of the term canon when the staff was asked about whether or not Flash Sentry was official to the show. Thinking that over, it seems to be another case of them being unsure on how to please the viewers, especially after the growing hype when the show started. But much to my surprise, during the tail end of Season 6 and onward to Season 7, my wishlist was actually being fulfilled. Chrysalis made a huge comeback in the Season 6 finale and would be an ongoing villain until the end of the show. We got to know Applejack's parents finally about their origin story, and for what I'm talking about today, we finally got an episode about the Alicorn sisters, a royal problem. The big reason as to why I wanted to see an episode revolving around the sisters is because after the pilot episode, it was only a matter of time on how they would adjust with each other since 1,000 years passed on. Granted, we did get tidbits of development, mostly from Luna in her episode appearances, like Season 2 and Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep. Celestia also did get some development by sharing her regretful feelings of banishing Luna in the start of Princess Twilight Sparkle. But what about the two together? The chemistry of these two sisters side by side. I know there were a few seconds of these grouped up periodically, but there had to be something going on behind the curtains. Putting aside their differences couldn't happen overnight, obviously, and anything could go sour and result in another catastrophe like they did 1,000 years ago. It's a very delicate thought. Not to mention, considering these are leader roles that the main characters look up to, knowing them a bit more on a personal level is kind of necessary. All things considered, A Royal Problem did just that and a bit more. It tackles their bitter attitude towards each other in regards to their jobs, and coming to terms with each other providing a lot of said development. I'll admit it has its flaws, but immediately the story is right on track with these two, albeit it's late to the party since it was a later season. But what makes up for it is how much of a bang they go for, and that thematically it develops an important topic about how one shouldn't judge or envy another's task at what they do, rather see their perspective and be in their shoes. This kind of behavior happens in our livelihood more than we imagine, especially by coincidence the day and night shifts people have with their jobs. There was even an entry of You Know It's Bullshit by James Rolfe about sleep, and when people who work in the late hour and sleep in the day are frowned upon. But when setting that aside, in the perspective of children who the show's target audience is, there are some who are jealous of one's living circumstances, like having a family who's in a wealthy state of satisfaction, while others who are dealing with other obstacles think of their lives have it easier. What most don't realize is what happens behind the curtains. Everyone has problems. In the eyes of a rich kid, they could either be bored with everything they have or be conditioned into fitting various social standards in order to sustain their wealth, whereas kids who are in the middle or lower class have the privilege to go outdoors and live life despite their problems. Additionally, there was a clip I was shared once by Keyframe called A Rich Shade of Blue from Class of 3000 that explains different circumstances. Definitely worth a look. So there's always a plus and negative side to everything, and this episode does it really well. Being the mediator of this conflict is Starlight Glimmer, who was chosen by the map to investigate. Some complained about her being chosen over Twilight, considering that she knows Celestia more, but aside from what the script says, this would backfire in terms of characterization. Considering that she was raised by Celestia, Twilight would have been more supportive to her. This is definitely given how much Twilight had to do for Luna in episodes like Luna Eclipse and Magic Sheep. Comparatively, Twilight's perception would gloss over Luna due to seeing Celestia's alleged superiority. Well, that in the very episode admits this as Twilight communicates to Starlight telepathically through a music box.
Poor Celestia. That's so sweet that she makes her sister pancakes every morning.
She's your mentor. I think you might be biased.
Fair enough.
Something I will admit is that Starlight can take some extreme measures and be rash. Two huge examples everyone uses is when she blasted Discord into oblivion in Matter of Principles, and in On the Road to Friendship, she traded Trixie's wagon for a bigger one for her own sake of comfort. They're often used as a smoking gun to demonstrate how bad of a role model she is. It's tiring to say the least on how often I hear Starlight as an alleged bad character, but I've seen others do worse. Excuse me. I won't deny her rash behaviors though. I only see them as trial and error. Case in point, switching out the marks of the two sisters when things got way too heated. This is both a reasonable plot point for the central conflict to be set up, but arbitrary at the same time. I have seen Starlight use a staff to swipe off cutie marks back in the cutie map, so it doesn't feel too far off from her capabilities. However, switching around the marks of two major rulers in Equestria, how much power does Starlight contain? Especially given that this is an uncontrollable 24-hour process. I could be looking too far into this. Nonetheless, the setup isn't bad, but it's fucking weird considering that magic and their limitations are all over the place. It's admittedly a common issue with the series as a whole, so I guess take the scene with a pinch of salt. This is kind of what I mean when I say that this episode isn't perfect. But in proceeding with its main plot, it leaves Starlight in a mess debating about whether or not the spell was a good idea.
Are you okay in there?
I'm good. Just, reading an exciting book. He's gonna think I'm nuts.
He's not the only one.
Not really helping, Twilight. I too would have placed you on that dresser as Starlight did. Crowdfunding for GoldenFox Pictures is supported by these following patrons: Ghost Clan Samurai, William Voron, Blue Griffin, Riza S, Iceberg, The Bluish Pony, Drog1989, War Hero, YeoWolf01, Edwin Flores, Filmer Brony VA, Rainbow Dash Fan, Brandon Bishop, Courtney Bright, Thomas Fan 3751, Sign Steel Rail, and Patrick Gardner. Thank you all very much for your support. So Luna goes to do Celestia's tasks. She underestimates the weight that falls on her shoulders. Aside from waving at everyone, she handles various contests like flowers that she has to give a medal to, struggles to open new shops with weak-ass scissors, sort out things with various delicates, and the guiltiest failure of them all: have a frown shot at the front of a school fundraiser photo that cost the said school a field trip. As predictable as it is, this is one of two factors that hits close to home for me in terms of real-life experiences. And in explaining so, it should lay out as why this works as both the narrative and its message about taking someone's spot out of envy. At the time of this review, I work an evening shift with customers at a supermarket. I load groceries, take a few items back to shelves that the customers have changed their minds on, and help with the said customers in finding what they're looking for. Some complain about what isn't available, ask for products that I have little knowledge of, and the worst of which is when some customers get snappy, especially when it comes to what discounts are which. 5% off of something, and it's not what they expect according to what the cashier clarifies. And as a result, it's a madhouse when some people are not happy. I'll never forget the old lady who snapped at me over my lack of knowledge with wine products, and dared to question me if I knew anything at the store, on top of the fact that I had to clock out of my shift. There's a laundry list of stories I could rant on about with my job. In fact, I shared some with my friends on a stream while they had theirs. It was very cathartic to say the least, as we learn how shitty customers can really be. Now granted, this doesn't happen all the time. A lot of customers I meet, help, and lend a hand in loading their cars are a breeze without too much of a hassle. But regardless, the biggest part of working at the supermarket is keeping a face on. No matter what, I have to keep a smile or a chill attitude, regardless of what customers say. This is mainly because we all have to maintain a calm and welcoming atmosphere, as people are looking for anything without feeling any sort of discomfort or threat. Letting my true feelings show and calling out somebody for their rash behavior can lead to some serious consequences. It could cost the store's reputation and gain less customers. Or I could get fired. There's a saying that I do agree with. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. In Luna's case, her unintentional scowling expression in the newspaper shot has bared heavy consequences on her end.
I didn't mean to. I've been smiling all day. My cheeks hurt. I stopped for 1 second, and that's when he took the picture.
Yeah, personal nitpick here, this moment felt a little too convenient and questionable. I get that it's meant to be comedic and get the plot going, but when it comes to taking photography for a newspaper, it's always important to take more than one shot. 2 or 3 at the very least, not 1. And furthermore, give a few time gaps with a few different poses to bring a variety to choose on which is the best. Again, I know it's nitpicking, but this is coming from somebody who has had some experience with photography. Ha, I wish I was. I only studied a bit so I can figure out how to get good shots ever since I got my DSLR. That way I could produce better content. Kind of important in the focus of quality. Anyways, as Luna's dealing with the guilt of costing the school their field trip, her next obstacle is dealing with a series of angry delegates.
Hello! Great news! There are no Timberwolves!
No, there are definitely Timberwolves!
That's pretty fucking funny. But additionally, I love that Luna talks about the actual values of her original job for once, that being having a lot of time to work with various problems, something which Celestia doesn't have. Aside from me though, this applies to everyone. There's hardly a moment to think something over and find a solution to, as life itself doesn't wait. I can't begin to tell you how many times I missed my chances of solving things that I didn't bother to find closure to. But speaking of closure, her encounters with the delegates are something I have a different connection with. More so realizing how my own mistakes can apply to the next point she has to deal with, and that is trying to sort out and calm down disputes. I must confess that I'm very stubborn over a lot of things. Yeah, shocker there. Everyone already knows that I'm extremely short-tempered, but there have been times when I'm stuck over something I'm troubled with, and some of my close friends try to sort things out, and more often than I realize, I turn down every alternative solution because of how focused I am on how I want things to go, failing to accept any compromise in the long run. Yeah, it's selfish, but when I'm in that mindset, I think differently. I act offensive, assuming everyone's either against me or patronizing me when someone tries to calm me down. This is something I see when Luna takes on the delegates and sees the end result by a time shift from day to night. Aside from my attitude problems, there were times I tried to be level-headed with some people and, well, I honestly failed because there are only so many options I can think of. The fact that others are able to find more options whenever I'm spoken to about my problems shows how extremely exhausting it is. So when I see that Luna's completely tuckered out, it hits close to home on how I imagined my friends would be. To those who are watching and you know who you are, I do apologize for how my behavior has been a burden to you, and I also apologize in advance since there's bound to be more complicated matters down the line. And on that note, Luna turns in as Celestia arrives just a second after.
Oh, hello, Starlight. I don't know about you, but I feel very well rested. Where's Luna?
She already turned in for the night.
Did she now? It seems my duties were harder than my sister expected.
Haha, keep tooting your horn, Celestia. Unbeknownst to you, you're about to go down the rabbit hole of Milo Murphy's Law of some karma, as Randy Feltface would jingle. So as Luna learns that keeping a straight face isn't as easy as she works with the laundry list of daily events, Celestia learns that a small list of tasks to handle in the middle of the night isn't any better as she encounters working with Luna's abilities to enter dreams. This is the biggest highlight of the episode and why it is very well worth the watch. Aside from the above, that being the Royal Sisters becoming the central focus of the episode, and that they have to learn to respect each other's duties, the dream sequence in the final act is very exciting. Granted, it's been done numerous times, a la the CMC Luna trilogy and Do Princess's Dream of Magic Sheep, but these segments were always filled to the brim with creative and bizarre methods thanks to the very idea of a dream. The animators used it to their full advantage to deliver something new every single time. And in this case, we learned by Celestia how the dream realm was entered through her perspective. The only thing closest that we got from this idea was in Magic Sheep. The transitions happen through flashes and portal segments though. But here, we see a roster of different dreams everyone has, like Cadence dancing with Flurryheart, Discord playing with the Schmooze, Derpy as a queen? Okay, that's Derpy. I shouldn't be surprised yet, I still am. And Pinky surfing on Gummy. That I'm used to, knowing Pinky's randomness factor. Upon entering the conflict, Celestia tries to help Starlight, who at this point regrets switching the marks. Before Celestia tries to help her though, we are given Daybreaker. This character was so enormously popular that she gained an endless amount of fan art. This also includes music like Prince Whatever's Holy Fire, to which, yeah, I've listened to this track so many times from his album Reimagine. Other times I'm listening to that 4-parter with the alternative universe of Chrysalis. Seriously, when's that second half of the music video coming out? It's been almost 2 years! Oh, sorry. Back to Daybreaker. Aside from the rise in popularity, there's a polarizing reception she has from a few people. That being she's a one-dimensional answer to Celestia's evil counterpart if anything would cause a snap. On the surface, yeah, it's a Nightmare Moon version of Celestia, but what follows in the episode brings a conflict within one's psyche. This is where Luna's job is the most difficult in contrast to Celestia. Any mistake can brutally hurt someone, and now Celestia is in the shoes of that scenario. And what Daybreaker does is convince her into potentially being an unstoppable leader over everyone. Borrowing a source from another review, Josh Scorcher and Nikki V talked about this when they reviewed the episode. While I don't always agree with Josh, this is a very strong point for Celestia and how much power she holds and could use it for the wrong reasons one day. While Luna was in prison on the moon, she was able to handle both night and day. She could have killed Luna if she wanted to. She would have dictated Equestria if she wanted to. And all of this comes to her sense of moral compass on what she should do. Would've, could've, should've. So realizing how much there is to handle, it's when Luna's brought forth to help the situation. We get her speech that revolves around settling each other's differences and facing the issue as Luna convinces Celestia she can do it. Cliché and cheesy to be sure, but it does its job. Very beautifully so.
Oh, Luna, I can't do this! I was wrong. Your job is so incredibly hard. You have to battle nightmares and work in the darkness and do it all alone! It takes such a brave, strong pony to do what you do!
And that pony is you. I walked a day in your shoes. I thought all you had to do was smile and be adored all the time, but I was wrong. There is so much more to it than that.
Unfortunately, as much as I love the episode, because of this segment alone, this does come to a legitimate issue. Due to how long it takes to get there, it makes the pacing uneven upon its replay value, or at the very least a hype upon its first watch. The scenes prior aren't bad, mind you, but it makes the anticipation too much for anyone to have the patience to sit through them for the sake of the scene. A close example of this unfortunate scenario is the movie Home Alone, a beloved classic about 8-year-old Kevin McAllister who's left behind by his family's holiday vacation. But be honest here, you like to fast forward that movie to the final act where the wet bandits get their asses kicked by Kevin's traps, don't you? Don't lie to me. That's what everyone remembers the movie for. Just like with this episode, most of you will remember the climactic dream sequence. Again, the scenes prior aren't bad. They contribute and solidify a good narrative. Kevin in Home Alone learns how important family is as he starts from exhausting himself in anything he wants to do to then having a sense of isolation and learning to be a responsible kid. As with the royal problem, the two sisters learn about how important their jobs are and shouldn't be taken for granted. It once again makes an uneven pace. Outside of that, however, and with the few arbitrary moments that tend to keep the plot going, this episode holds up fantastically. After finally focusing on the sisters and the potentiality of what could go south, we learned that they're just as flawed as rulers and that they still have obstacles to overcome on their own terms. The message was on point about understanding one's job by being in their shoes. And even though the final act is something to be patient for, the best way to recommend this is to appreciate the moments provided with Luna. Her struggles with the delicates were hilarious, and it makes it all the more rewarding when reaching the final act with Celestia. And the way Celestia enters still gets created before the final act. The dialogue works too well in everyone's favor as it makes them self-aware of everything, and the dynamic of the sisters have such a realistic flair on how they bounce off each other. The tidbits like the pancakes and the lavender share a good range of showing ungratefulness to a wholesome payoff when they see it from different views. Also, yeah, Luna, those pancakes were awful, and I don't blame Celestia for talking to herself. If you ever give the show a chance, this episode is definitely on my list of recommendations. Until next time, this is GoldenFox, and take care.